Welcome, everyone. Amrita, sorry, I was just doing this. Why don't you come? May I request everyone to please take your seats? We are about to begin the next session. Amrita, over to you. Come.
Oh, welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a good lunch and a break. So, continuing the streak again, we saw two sessions on transition impact on the large enterprises and MSMEs in the morning. So, continuing the discussion further, session 3 will discuss about transition impact on the clusters. For this discussion, we have with us Mr. Arvind M. Adi, Treasurer, Hosur Industrial Association and President, AILCAIM, Mr. B.C. Datta, Vice President, Ola Electric, Mr. Rahul Bagdia, Chairman and Managing Director, P. Manifold, Mr. Sharif Kamar, Fellow and Associate Director, Transport and Urban Governance Division, TERI, Mr. Thiru Srinivas, Senior Advisor, EV Sector, Facilitating MSMEs of Tamil Nadu. The session is moderated by Ms. Mridula Pandey, Senior Manager, Children's Investment Foundation. The session would start with a brief presentation by Ms. Atika Wadhwa, Director, Urban Transition, iForest. Over to you, Atika.
Thank you, Amrita, and I welcome all of you today. I'm just going to take about a few minutes, about 4 to 5 minutes, to just give a contextual presentation on why we are talking about transition impact on clusters. Automobile production in India is concentrated, in clusters which form the manufacturing base or hotspots due to either favorable environment, ecosystem, the policy framework of the state, access to various markets, good infrastructure, or could be availability of also skilled labor and workforce. The largest clusters are located around Pune, Nasik, Aurangabad, and Mumbai in the west, Gurugram and Faridabad, as we all know, in the north, Chennai, Coimbatore, Hosur in the south, and recently, last few years, also in the central India, Indore, Pithampur, and Mandipur in Madhya Pradesh is coming up as another hotspot for automobile. For the purpose of our study, we took three clusters, Gurugram, Hosur, and Pune, which were considered to evaluate the impact of EV transition at the regional level. And it was done based on assessment of all ACMs in the cluster. Further, it was supported by the on-ground surveys of 300 ACMs to get the ground realities and understand and develop an understanding about how the impact on various clusters vary depending upon their regional disparity, depending upon their diversity with respect to the scale of operations and the type of enterprises. Typically, what we found was that automobile clusters are characterized by large concentration of MSMEs, which we also spoke about MSME in the last session. These enterprises not only represent a major share of the auto manufacturing units, but also have large-scale employment dependence. As you can see in the table here, Hosur and Pune, they have a very large share of MSME presence, close to 95% in Hosur and about 99% in Pune. Pune also had a workers which is evenly distributed across ACMs. The extent of impact differs across the cluster. It's also dependent upon the business profile of enterprises in the clusters together. If you see, Pune and Hosur have large concentration of ACMs in the non-powertrain segment. The figure stands at 85% for Hosur and 82% for Pune. While Gurugram has a reasonable manufacturing base in powertrain components. About 40% of the enterprises in Gurugram are anticipated to face, have a high to moderate impact. Conversely, this figure ranges from 20 to 25% for Hosur and Pune, and it is primarily driven by the kind of business they are operating in. It was also noted that Pune and Hosur, within the non-powertrain, close to 60% are involved primarily in molding and process-based and machining work. And the numbers for Pune were almost similar at about 52. We had also undertaken an assessment to understand the transition strategies that are being adopted, if any, or planned by these enterprises in response to the changing demands of EV sector. ACMs have started transitioning to EV related components. We heard about that in the previous session as well. Overall, it was observed that 27% enterprises in Gurugram, 21% in Hosur, and a large percentage of 45% in Pune are currently supplying EV based components to OEMs. Further, there has been interest from ACMs to diverse and divulge into that EV segment. The primary survey also highlighted that most of these enterprises are making a logical transition, and they are expanding into the businesses by supplying parts of the same sub-assembly to the EV, while only a small percentage were found to be transitioning and taking opportunistic angle to diversify their business portfolio based on new opportunities in the EV ecosystem. This is particularly true for large and medium enterprises who have the financial strength to undertake such risk and also have the technical capability to take that challenge. While as a last slide, I would just want to leave the floor open with Mridula and ponder about what could be done to support entrepreneurship and strengthen the local economies, because clusters are the thriving economies for the workforce at that level. Also, what has been the impact of various cluster development programs that have been undertaken? Sorry. Also, what has been, the cluster development program was also a part of the MSME Act, and it would be interesting to know if these kind of programs have helped develop the regional ecosystem for livelihood and economy of the cluster. Thank you, Mridula. From here, I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Atika. And yes, we need some energy after that lunch. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to this session on challenges, opportunities, and the roadmap for just transitions in India's automobile sector, and specifically focusing on the clusters, as we just heard Atika present. My name is Mridula. I am a senior manager at Children's Investment Fund Foundation. We are a UK-based philanthropy, but have extensive programs in India, and I've been a proud supporter of iForest over the last few years. And I'm really happy to have an excellent panel today with us on stage, and also really excited about the fact that we are finally focusing on just transition in the automobile sector. I think for a really long time, and rightly so, the focus of just transition has been on coal, energy, etc. But now, as the EV sector is transitioning, as the automobile sector is transitioning, I think it's really important that we bring the focus of a just transition into this sector. And therefore, congratulations to the team at iForest for having convened us today to discuss just that. And thank you, Atika, for that presentation, laying down the context for the conversation right now that we are going to have. So we obviously have a few questions, and we've got good 50 minutes to discuss this. So please be generous and open and honest about in your remarks, and we can have a good discussion following. I can start with, I think, Mr. Arvind, you, given that we've been speaking about clusters and the fact that EV share is increasing. Your opinion on what disruption has this caused, this EV transition has this caused in the business of auto component manufacturers, specifically in Hosur, and how are enterprises diversifying and taking up the opportunity that is emerging?
Yeah, good afternoon. Is it okay? Yeah. Yeah, good afternoon. I would talk more in the context of Hosur as a auto component hub. And specifically, Hosur has got a lot of two-wheeler industry, so I'll be talking from that context. So, like Mr. Mohan said in the earlier session, a lot of the transition is going to affect the powertrain, engine, exhaust systems. And that area, definitely a lot of job changes, job losses are going to happen. But again, newer fields like motor manufacturing, powertrain for that, battery manufacturing, and newer skills in those areas are required. And unfortunately, the industry is still not anywhere close to being ready to address those areas. So it will be a big challenge, and the role of clusters, industrial bodies, and the government is very crucial to ensure that this transition happens. Otherwise, we probably will miss the bus on some of these areas. So That is one area of concern. Another area that I would like to touch about, probably not directly, is how do we as auto clusters, as hubs of activity, manufacturing activity, how do we attract talent? Today, a lot of these auto hubs don't have the kind of infrastructure that is required for the future. Quality of living in some of these manufacturing hubs do not attract the right talent at all levels. So, as an industrial body, we do advocate with the government. How do they create infrastructure? How do they attract the talent that is required? For example, Ola is in a very remote place, probably 40, 50 kilometers from the nearest, even small town. And they probably have a lot of difficulty in getting the talent they need in the shop floors. So that is one concern. And even in a place like Hosur, which is very close to Bangalore, we still have challenges. We have it's a population of about 3-4 lakhs. We have traffic jams of 1 hour sometimes. So these are areas that the government should probably address, and as industries, we should also be part of the solution. And in terms of skilling and people availability, again, somebody said in the morning that you have workers coming in, especially in the south of India, we have employees mostly from the north and the east, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Assam, and all those areas. So creating the right infrastructure, the ease of doing business could also involve all this in terms of workers' hostels and those kind of things. That is where China probably scores way ahead of us in creating these kind of infrastructures and making it easier to do business. So these are things that we would want the government to really come about and do it. And again, I would like to give you an example of what is our competition for talent. Today, manufacturing, your employees are not going to similar industries. We have seen cases where people have gone from a job of a welder to a Swiggy delivery boy. And, those are, they're shifting industries. And those are challenges that a lot of us would face, and we'll have to figure out how to handle that. So especially in this industry, you spend a lot of time training people for quality, for the mass production, productivity, and all that. And then you lose them to something as simple as a Swiggy delivery. It becomes very difficult, very challenging, especially for SMEs who cannot afford to continuously keep training, and they don't have those kind of budgets. So these are challenges that I would throw open to everyone and see if we can find solutions to the problem.
Yeah, thank you so much. In fact, you've kind of brought the most important challenge in terms of people and skills that are needed, because if you don't have those skills, then this transition can get impacted, right? So thank you for bringing that up. And I'm going to just pick up that thread and go to Mr. Datta, because you alluded to the fact that, that you are quite far off from the main city, right? But you have a large cluster in that area. How is your ecosystem sort of adopting and evolving to capture the growing demand for EVs? What have you been doing as Ola Electric to sort of capture this opportunity? And therefore, do you also face similar challenges as Mr. Arvind that he alluded to?
Yeah. Good afternoon. Ola, of course, why we set up our this thing in Krishnagiri or Hosur area. Now Krishnagiri is a new name, I think. So we'll call it as Hosur area. In that, most of the EV, in my knowledge and the assessment that we have been discussing with the government of India, all that, it's all import and assemble and then sell. Nothing more than that. Then the FAME made some restriction saying that you have to have 50% domestic manufacturing should be there. So because of that, I think many companies started sourcing locally. Even in that, somebody else imports and then gives it to the local. All that is happening. Ola is one company where we decided from day one that we will source everything locally and then manufacture. For that, we found that Tamil Nadu is most ideal location in terms of the vendors, the supply chain, everything is perfect, very well placed. Especially the Hosur area is definitely good, and for two-wheeler at least. So two-wheeler, I must tell you, in India today, whatever is the sales that is happening, 60% of it comes from Hosur. 60% of the scooters manufactured in this Hosur area are sold. And, that is the kind of number that Hosur belt, produces. And then the skill part of it, you mentioned about skill, Adi mentioned about skilling part. The skilling part, what we did was we tied up with National Skill Development Corporation. At the same time, we decided that this should be an all-woman factory. For the first time in the country, we have, though it's in a remote place, we made sure that the entire workforce is all by women. We have 3,000 girls working. Many of the videos are available on the YouTube. You can check that. And a lot of good support from the Tamil Nadu government. Though the other governments, I have visited for the setting up of the factory to Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, UP, and then Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Of course, everybody showed interest, but the supply part of it, the components and part of it, Hosur appeared to be the ideal location. That's how we set up our unit. And from the point of view of the size that we are talking about, this is going to be the world's largest electric two-wheeler plant and will be functioning from this Hosur belt. And 15% of the world's production of EVs will be making it from it. And we will also trying to increase the workforce. So from 3,000 girls, we want to make it 10,000 girls. So that's the kind of size that we are now talking about. In addition to that, we have also got the clearance from Government of India for the under PLI for the battery cell manufacturing. That's the one item which is now imported. Nobody makes. It's either from China or from Korea, from outside of India anyway. So we import from Korea. So we want to make this also here in India so that more than 80% of the components of our vehicle will be made here in India. That's the end this thing. This is most important. At the same time, what we have done from our end, we have also been pushing the other government, like for UP, we met other day, the chief secretary. We have been pushing, like we are discussing about the clusters or hub, we are saying, kind of an electric EV hub we make it. This Hosur also, we have been requesting the Tamil Nadu government to make this into a EV hub so that more manufacturers come in, and then the suppliers who are smaller this thing, so they will also find it easy to increase the capacity, make better quality, and bring more which is now we are importing. There are some components which are being imported. All that can be made here in India and then supplied. So in my view, Hosur definitely is the ideal location, though there was some presentation made as to percentage of powertrain and other components of Gurgaon and Pune. Pune is definitely good, but feel Hosur is more ideal.
Thank you. And I think with that, let me then go to Mr. Srinivas. We've heard some really good things about Hosur and Tamil Nadu providing the right and conducive environment for such cluster level growth for EVs to happen. But you must have been seeing that there are multiple clusters within Tamil Nadu, right? And given the different nature of these enterprises and business, beyond the skill, I mean, their skill is definitely one challenge that both of the gentlemen alluded to. But are there any other challenges that different clusters are facing, and therefore, how is the government sort of supporting?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very important question. You have to do a study on understanding what are the inherent strengths in a particular region and try and build a cluster around that and do everything possible to fill the gaps and make it succeed. Since there's been a discussion on Hosur, I'll just touch upon Hosur very briefly. Hosur has always had, thanks to TVS and other companies who first went there, now same thing Ola is doing, has created a very strong vehicle level component, whether it is frames, whether it is exhaust. They've built a very strong capability there. And today in South India, I haven't seen a better component at the vehicle level. Not about the engines and others. Of course, your data also shows that on the powertrain, Hosur is not that big. But the final assembly is more than the engines and everything else. It's about the plastics. It's about the metal. It's about the fabrications. It's about how you're able to put it together. There, Hosur has a strength, and we are continuing to promote Hosur from a Tamil Nadu government point of view in that area. And very well said, we need to bring even more of two-wheeler and three-wheeler companies into that region. And Hosur may also, Ola may also lead the way in bringing car manufacturing there. Fingers crossed. Now I want to spend a little bit of time about Coimbatore, where we have done a lot of work. On the powertrain, Coimbatore has been a very strong candidate for powertrain on the EV business. They have been contributing on gears and engines and transmissions for many years, but they also have a very strong pump and motor industry. It's almost like a cottage industry there, how they make pumps. Of course, converting from a pump motor to an electric motor takes a certain amount of effort, but the base DNA is there. And so we have been working with them and with WRI and others. Tamil Nadu government has been working to create that as a center for EV motor manufacturing in the state. We're targeting very big. And similarly, on power electronics, we're looking at Coimbatore as a strong power electronics. Again, a lot of that is because of the very strong education profile in that region. We're not talking about entry-level work. We're talking about a little bit more technical. Somebody with a polytechnic, somebody with an engineering degree. So it's very important to understand that when you're promoting a cluster. And Chennai has a very strong engine and transmission manufacturing, and it is really going to be impacted by the EV transition. And so the thing that we are promoting with them is to convert that into a tooling, the basic capability, tooling and prototyping. So you try and convert all your skills in machining and a deep understanding of tolerance stack-up and things like that, and convert that into a tooling. Today, we import a lot of tools in India. And the other area that we are also promoting, and we haven't really identified where, we need to develop a cluster for making process equipment and test equipment. A lot of them are imported even today. People say, you come to us because we have the best German machine. When are we going to say we have the best Indian machine? Right? We have. And so you can come to us. So that is another area that we need to develop clusters where we can make machines. That's a huge industry, very high margin industry. And I think India is ready for that.
That was really inspiring. I think that's what we need to think about, right? How do we add more value on the top end, I guess, and not just on the assembly side. So thank you for sharing those remarks. I'll move to Mr. Bhatia, you. Having heard the manufacturers, the government's perspective, and given your experience in India and abroad, what is your view on the kind of regional approach that is required to help a cluster? Because when we're saying cluster, we really mean multiple things, right? It's about manufacturing all the things like OEMs, also workforce, the service sector that's servicing the cluster. So what do you think is the kind of right approach that we need to encourage such clusters to capture the opportunity that is at hand?
I think when we talk about cluster, we are talking about driving collaboration, and that collaboration leading to better innovations, right, and better efficiency. So I think that is what we are really trying to achieve by thinking of clusters. So when we are thinking of a regional approach to raise a right cluster, I think there should be a right body. I think it should start from there. I'm also telling from my experience of doing a pre-feasibility during COVID time, like actually in Tamil Nadu, I was talking to Thiru also, a place named Mallanur, some 50 kilometers north of Chennai. It was done for SIPCOT. So I'm also drawing some pieces from that experience, Mridula. So when we are talking of cluster, there has to be a right planning. That are we kind of overlapping with existing? So in Tamil Nadu, there is already Coimbatore, Hosur kind of getting developed, Oragadam is there. So when we are talking of either a new cluster, right? So what is the clear objective of that cluster? Thiru talked about like leveraging the right strengths of the region, right? So I think that has to be looked into with a very good central level planning and a right kind of an authority and body which will facilitate not just developing the first land, power, water infra of the cluster, but really kind of driving right partnerships, right? The single window clearances, lot of permits, approvals, lot of I would say like domain knowledge, right? Like what partnerships to be brought. Like when I'm talking of partnerships, we are talking of some right international company setting up operations here. Because we want to pose India as a manufacturing hub and leverage that stance and continue moving forward. Plus also driving partnerships, like a lot of our interactions with lot of OEMs, they are also struggling with the right supply, right? So there are also a lot of national partnerships that we need to rightly build. So playing that role of partnerships with the right central planning and bringing the right cluster, I think that is where it should start, right? And then if you look into the essential elements of a cluster, where then we need to start supporting with right things, like one is the physical infrastructure, right? Right land, good rate power, good water, and all other roads, logistics. If you are looking at exports, and if the location is allowing, then the ports and other infrastructure. So those are the, I would say, physical infrastructure that needs to be appropriately planned for the cluster development. The second layer, what I would say, is a kind of a domain infrastructure, right? I think in the morning there were discussions that R&D, right? So we should, typically when we are thinking of cluster, we are always talking of more manufacturing. But I think we also have to start looking into like how do we house that innovation and R&D and that testing infrastructure as part of the cluster, because all the OEMs, the tier 1, tier 2 supplier there would need a right kind of a testing equipment infrastructure. And today India, like you go to ARAI, you go to ICAT, there is a long waiting list, right? And with the rising number of players going for testing, we are facing shortage on the testing equipments. So I think I would say like that is the domain kind of an infrastructure that we also need to plan as part of the planning of the cluster. Human resource, I think that remains very important. Most of times I hear about the workforce, very important for just transition to kind of plan a right kind of a skilling infrastructure, right kind of a training centers associated with right local academia. So I think that needs to be appropriately planned. But I think there's a lot of engineering research and design that also goes into the skilling part. So I think, and that is where like many of people I interact in OEMs, they are looking for those right kind of people with more systems engineering. So I think that's another skilling part that needs to be looked into the infrastructure. and whoever comes into the cluster at the end, they also want to make their sales happen, right? So can a cluster also support facilitating the demand sides, incentives, facilitating, right, dealerships, multi-retail dealerships, kind of a thing, so that someone coming into that cluster is kind of having a higher confidence on success and profitability. So I think that is what I would say a good cluster design approach that can be facilitated, Vidula.
So that's actually, you've laid down good strategy for how a cluster can be developed. And I'm going to pick up that and go to you, Sharif, to therefore say, if that's the strategy of how you develop a cluster, who are the key people that we really need to bring into the process? Because there are clearly multiple layers to this cluster development, and the interventions are going to be really tailored, right? So who are the key people that we need to keep informed, keep engaged, and who are the decision makers in this whole process?
Thank you. I think first I'll thank iForest to invite me as one of the panelists and the esteemed panelists here. And while listening to all the discussions, that most of it is already covered, but if you look at the cluster level development and the importance of key players who are there, of course, the OEMs will lead the decision making and also supporting the ecosystem kind of developing around the manufacturing plant. So OEMs definitely yes. I'm sitting with the advisor in the Tamil Nadu government. So government is a major player while talking about job and just transition. If you're talking about transitioning from IC to electric vehicles, so that's important. So these two are major players, and therefore the onus and responsibility of these two stakeholders to train, upskill, support, both financially as well as in terms of kind as well, will be critical. If you're talking about skilling, ITIs, the role of ITIs that are there, and we have been in TERI doing research work around job impact and skill gap assessment. For the heavy duty vehicles, it's another ball game altogether. But some of the component manufacturers will definitely be supporting, irrespective of the segment that we are talking about. There will be niche area that will be there, but if you're talking about skill, the ITIs will be critical. And therefore, I heard in the previous session, Ms. Nandkumar talking about how they are tying up with ITIs for designing the course for their own requirement for their manufacturing product. So that's an important role that OEMs will be playing. While talking about and discussing with some of the stakeholders, especially in Tamil Nadu, my team was there in last week. Some of the OEMs are not too keen on employing ITI level in the EVs domain, particularly because of the sophistication and the upskilling that is required in the EV segment. How do we bridge that gap is something that we'll have to figure out as we go along the way, in terms. The other key challenge that we as researchers, I wanted to point out, is the availability of data around the ecosystem that is there. Some of it, most of it is, MSME, Atika presented about the MSME sector playing the major role. Somewhere it's 90% of the entire ecosystem. But the data capturing, that's where government will have to take an important step. And based on data, you can have more informed decision on that particular front. So I'll stop here, but I'll be happy to kind of pitch in later on. Yeah.
Thanks, Sharif. I think very relevant points. You wanted to add to that? Yes, sir.
Skill part of it.
Yes.
Mentioned about ITIs, Tamil Nadu here nothing. I must tell you, this is kind of a story. But then, when we decided to go in Krishnagiri district, Krishnagiri is about 50 kilometers from Hosur. Hosur is a very up and very, very strong industrial, whereas Krishnagiri is more it's a backward district as far as Tamil Nadu state is concerned. So absolutely no infrastructure, no support, nothing is there. Okay, now we decided, we'll employ only girls. How do you do that? Now, Mr. Sharif rightly said, ITI, how do you bring IT? very nice this thing we made, that we decided, okay, we'll take only 12th pass girls. And we have been asking girls to please come join our company. Girls are not ready around Krishnagiri district. It's very tough. I don't know how many of you are from a village background. You go to village, a new movie release, either on a bullock cart, or they go and announce, or an auto, three-wheeler, they go and announce that this movie is getting early. So please come. Similar attempt we made in terms of calling out all the girls, please come, join here. And then we were requesting those parents also, assuring them that come along with the girl, you experience how is the plant, what is the kind of setup, what kind of support, safety, all that. And then we made them to, join. So what we are now doing is, now that you mentioned about ITA, so we have so many +2 we have taken, we have given them good training, and we also move them from one production area to another, so that they get multi-skilled, and then they become more, efficient. And the best part of these 12th pass and being trained in EV production, the best part of employing the girls is that so much of passion is there in terms of making the best quality scooter going out of the factory. She will not allow even if there is a small scratch. That is the best decision. We all think that the best decision that we have taken is employing, these girls. This is really, really good. So 12th pass and then giving them training. EV as such is entire thing is a new this. Hardly after though there was a FAME subsidy was there, nobody was willing to produce these EVs. Only after Ola came into the scene, the others started making. All of you are aware the kind of statements some of the two-wheeler CEOs have made on that. So today you can see good interest in the EV, good interest in setting up these plants. So definitely the skill development is one area which Mr. Sharif mentioned. So at the same time, this entire thing is a zero. Today, world over, China of course is the front runner in all this. But then as far as the EV is concerned, it is like ground zero. Everything is start from this point here now. So Ola believes that India should be the center of this technology, center of this development, and should be the front runner in terms of making the best quality electric vehicles, mobility solutions, and then exporting it also.
So that's an incredible example that you shared with us. In fact, that was going to be my next question to you, which is that you've invested in skilling and training, and you explained how well the ground level efforts that you had to do. So therefore, what are your plans going forward in terms of, you did allude to some of that before, in terms of skilling and employing more girls in the Ola Electric manufacturing facilities? What are your plans going forward?
Yeah, one area is, of course, NSTC we have tied up, ASTC. All these people have got some kind of a structured, the program is there, curriculum is there, with which these +2 also get trained. They get a certificate with a government certified this thing, so that they can get employment elsewhere. At the same time, we are also making sure that people do a lot of R&D, any innovation, small innovation, we recognize. And similar way, we have been asking the entire Tamil Nadu, all the ITIs and diploma, wherever the engineering colleges are there, to give more thrust to the electric vehicle technology, so that the focus is there on EV, and then more people get into this. At the same time, I personally visit many of the engineering colleges in Tamil Nadu, of course, either on a college day or some kind of the first day of the college, they invite, and then we go and speak, and we tell them that future is going to be EV, and future is going to be from here in India, and you are the future. So make sure that you involve yourself into this, do some R&D, all that. And incidentally, Mr. Srinivasan mentioned incubation centers, R&D centers. Even Tamil Nadu government has also done that. 2-3 incubation centers are there where anyone who's an engineering graduate has some idea, wants to do something, he can just walk into any of these incubation R&D centers and start working. Everything is available free.
Yeah.
You no need to pay 1 rupee. Even IIT Madras, that is where Ather was bought, the scooter. So this is the kind of requirement that India needs today, so that
Exactly.
future, we can make a better product, improve it, make many things possible.
No, it's great to see the OEMs leading the charge on this one. Thank you so much for sharing that example and Ola's plans on that. In fact, I wanted to go to Mr. Arvind, you, and picking up from that. If therefore you're employing more girls, you are getting more people from the industrial clusters, you do see a change happening in the ecosystem around, right? So like there's increasing livelihood dependence in these clusters of people, right? So people are dependent on these automobile manufacturing clusters for their livelihoods. And if this is now transitioned towards more and more EV, and if they need to be skilled, what kind of schemes or support do you want from the government? You did speak to the skilling and upskilling, but beyond that, are there any specific schemes that you think would be helpful in this transition process?
Let me talk about employment of girls again. In our own interest, I think a lot of industries we employ girls because we find them to be much more reliable. They come back to work every day. A lot of the boys would not come to work on a Monday, usually. So, a lot of industries survive because the women have entered the workforce. I would say that as a big positive step. And in Hosur, again, as the Industries Association, we have recently put up a big skill development center. We find that a lot of these certified programs don't really address our needs. The curriculums are probably 5-10 years old, and the fast-changing environment is, it doesn't help us. And while OEMs have their own training facilities, a lot of the Tier 1s, Tier 2s cannot afford to have their own centers. So all the bigger industries, we invested and we put up a center, which we have envisioned as a place which would be very quick on its feet. It would tailor-make programs for whichever industry wants it, and deliver short-term courses. And we are looking at also skilling the blue-collar workers. A lot of them don't have the basic idea of a shop floor. In fact, a lot of shop floors in our region today are pan stained, which is, we find it very difficult to change that culture. So many industries, have a whitewashing budget every month. So this is very fundamental, but this is the level of people that we're trying to upskill and bring them up at the worker level. So these are concerns that we have. So from the government intervention point, I would say across the country, at the school level, we should be looking at training people for behavioral aspects first. I think this morning somebody said, the actual skill is the last level of training. Before that, you want a mindset change and all that. So that makes a lot of sense. You need them to really look at how behavior, the attitude. That is what most of us look for in a person. And then each industry would have their own special needs, and they could train them for that, the skills. But at the school level, if they don't have the right attitude, then getting them into a shop floor, it takes more than a year to get people to change their mindset and align to a work environment. In fact, recently in my own company, a person who joined left within the first week, and we found out that the reason was they could we don't allow cell phones inside the factory. And this person said, I can't live without my cell phone. So I can't work in your company. So these are new things we're seeing. We've never seen these kind of things before. But in a manufacturing environment, you cannot have somebody distracted with the phone when they're working on a machine. So we don't do that. So these are challenges that we see where large-scale educational system changes need to probably come in. And in terms of creating the infrastructure, like I said earlier, the environment in a place, the cluster, should be quite attractive for these people to come stay. That would really go a long way in creating a better, easier manufacturing facility. Yeah.
No, that's actually very helpful, and thank you for summing up your thoughts very comprehensively. But then I think because it's government intervention, I'm going to come to you, Mr. Srinivas, again. You said that Hosur has been a cluster for a really long time, right? Even before EVs came in. But is the state, as Tamil Nadu as a state, looking at electric vehicles as a growth factor for the state, right? And are there any lessons, therefore, from Tamil Nadu? Because a lot of other states would also similarly want to develop clusters and make this a growth story for them. Is EV a growth angle for you at all?
Yeah, I think Tamil Nadu has been on the automotive sector for a long time, right from independence. But one of the biggest hurdles we had was with the IC engine, the technologies, the capacities, advantages were elsewhere, whether it was Japan, whether it was US or Europe and things like that. Electric vehicles gave us an opportunity to level and leap ahead, especially on the two-wheeler, three-wheeler and light commercial vehicles areas. Interestingly, also on cars these days, which is a very pleasant surprise. So now what the government has recognized is, okay, the clusters are there, but there's a tendency for vertical integration. And if you really looked at benchmarking around the world, especially if you look at the computer industry and and the cell phone industry, how it evolved, the tier ones actually rule it. The Intels, the Seagates, they rule it. It's not so much the OEMs. Of course, OEMs have a very important role. But so one of the things that we have identified is learning from the benchmarks. We formed a EV task force in Tamil Nadu, and it's a very recent development. And we have people from the industries department, from the MSME department, from CITCO, the people who provide land, the plug-and-play facility. It's very much a plan. TITCO, which does investments, TANGETCO, which does power, transportation department, the RTO, and the institutions, IIT Madras and Anna University, and DOTE for the polytechnics. And Startup TN and also TNIFMC, the people who invest in startups. These are, government is 49% owned, but it is a venture fund. It's a private company with a significant government ownership. So there's a lot of thought that has gone into forming a sector-specific task force now. And it remains to be seen how successful we are going to be, but we think it's going to be successful. And we are establishing common facility centers in the clusters. We say, okay, this region, motor cluster, we'll give a common facility center. The government will invest in it. Just like what the union government did with GARC and NATRIP and ICAT. So we are developing these. So the government is investing, and government is also trying to bring in more and more of similar industries in the region and more training and things like that. So that is what we're doing. And one of the other things that we found out in this exercise is exports, like what Reliance does. It brings the crude and it refines and sells it. It doesn't even come into the country, right? It's at the port. That's it. So we're also trying to set up industries and clusters that will take advantage of our coastline. And so we're looking at Tuticorin as a very significant. That's why we were able to attract VinFast, because it is an export-focused investment for them. So I think the government has to step in. Government has to play a role like a corporate strategic organization would be. I very much think it's the way forward.
That's incredible. Thanks actually for sharing Kapan's perspective on that. And we have a few minutes, but I'll come to Mr. Bhakdia again. Therefore, I mean, we need to get to 30% EVs. Is the ecosystem ready? Are the states ready? Tamil Nadu might be, but are the other states ready? What do you think about it?
I think like all the panelists, starting with Amitabh Kanji, did answer this question. I think this is the best time for the industry. I don't think before this kind of alignment of policy, support, fiscal incentives, demand side stimulation, supply side measures has come together, right? So I think the industry is definitely geared and charged up. We already have the global largest players kind of coming up in such a short time, right? So there are things that we still need to cover up, but I think I'm overall fairly optimistic that India would be able to achieve these targets, and I would still believe with lot of good efforts that is happening and its further scalability that India would also be showing way to the world. Some of, like sir said, like Amitabh Kanji, I think he gave this vision that he wants an Indian manufacturer setting up a plant with its model running in UK and other West part, right? So I think those will also become a possibility with the kind of work and fundamental things that's happening. So I'm positive it will happen with that.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the positive sentiment on that. And Sharif, coming to you last, what is research showing? Is your research showing other states being interested in similarly diversifying into EV manufacturing, component manufacturing? Are states doing that at all?
Yeah, definitely. I think what we have come across is, and from India's perspective as well, if you look at the past 5 to 6 years and how the growth in EV demand or sales has increased, that automatically tells about the support system that is there to push these vehicles out of the manufacturing units, right? So that has happened and that is happening, and that's why I just thinking, just transition to just-in-time transition is something that we are now talking about. We are getting there in terms of preparing ourselves, both from the manufacturing, from the government side as well as from the people who are now showing interest to enroll into the ITIs and specific, modules related to electric vehicles. The demand is increasing right now, as compared to what was there in 5 years back. So that definitely tells about the entire EV story that India is looking at, with the kind of push that is there. I'll just talk about some of the skilling aspects and some of the things that we have come across while talking about. There are 4 areas that needs to be looked at. One is from the awareness angle. Who are the stakeholders who need to be made aware of the EV ecosystem, how it operates, the safety, the hazards. So all those from the the awareness part of it. The second is the basic skill, which would be there from from the assembly side, from people who are coming through ITIs and diploma holders who are there, and that would require also from the the operation side of EVs as well, not only from the manufacturing but also the operation side. The fourth is the advanced and hands-on, where you need to have workshops in place to demonstrate certain activities that are there. And the fourth is the expert level, detailed requirement that will be coming up, especially in EVs, where you see PhDs and doctorates in data science and electronics, and all those also emerging as one of the new areas for EV segment, and that's something completely missed out in while talking about. So high skilled white collar job is something that EVs is, and we are there are no dearth of software engineers and electronics engineers in the country right now, and that's where India could be the supplier of knowledge to the outside world as well. So that's something that wanted to bring in. And the other component is the OEMs getting themselves ready. When we are talking to one of the global manufacturers in India regarding the module development for training of their skill sets. And we developed it, and it went through all iterations and all. One thing that they came up was to have a specific topic in detail about the AI ML related skills that would be coming up, especially from the charging infrastructure point of view. And that's picking up quite fairly and fastly in terms of how we are looking at it. So I'll stop here, but I see it's only 2 minutes now.
Yeah, and there's an alarm that's going up. But no, thanks. Actually, that's incredible. EV is not just as a growth story in terms of manufacturing output, but actually high skills and that high. It's. Thank you for again. Lots of positive sentiments expressed from the panel. We've got a few minutes for questions from the audience. If you have any questions, please do put up your hands and identify yourself and do address question to at least just one, at most one panelist.
Yes, yes. I'm Manish Sharma. I'm working as a consultant. My basic question is that why are we too late as far as the semiconductors are concerned? Like, for example, in Europe and US, we're finding that NVIDIA, and a lot of these TSMC are very much, collaborating with the, OEMs, for example, with Toyota, etc. But we are not seeing that sort of partnership, and that will impact because ultimately Indian automobiles which function on fossil fuels basically are component based, and they might not be able. They will need to transition quite swiftly towards these sensors, chips, etc. for passenger safety and for meeting emission norms, etc. in the future. So how can we see that partnership going in future?
Who are you addressing your question to? But maybe Mr. Srinivas, if you can take that question.
It's a little bit off syllabus, but I will still answer that. See, I think when you talk about electric vehicles, there are a lot of pieces to it. And the electronics that you mentioned is one piece, and it happens to be a smaller piece. The whole idea of semiconductor is a problem across the board, whether it is computers, whether it is cell phones, whether it is your air conditioner, you name it, everywhere. And the impact of the processor on the EV is not as much as what you may imagine from the EV side of things. But to answer the question, what are we doing from the EV point of view? There is a significant amount of computation on electric vehicles, whether it is the motor control unit, whether it's the MOSFETs that go into it. It's also semiconductors, the BMS, the battery management system, the vehicle management system, the telecommunications that vehicles have, telematics. So there's a lot of, so thankfully the Indian government has really put up a very, very brave face and moved forward intently on that. And from an EV industry, we are recommending that we look at silicon carbide as a significant initial investment into semiconductor space. It's a little bit easier to do than some of the processes. And maybe that'll happen very quickly.
Yes. CB has a question here. CB.
Your Ola is by far the biggest two-wheeler manufacturer, EV, right? Are you thinking about a standardization? Listen, from charging infrastructure to battery to semiconductors, EV will require, like in computer industry, some sort of a standardization to happen. Is industry thinking about a standardization? Is there any initiative which is coming in place for standardization? Because without a standardization, everyone is going to come with different socket. That's what it is, right?
Yeah. Niti Aayog has done some work on this. They have initiated standardization. Everyone feels, of course, we have been talking to other OEMs also. There's a feeling that European charging system is the one which is ideal. Though, of course, as of now, different charging systems are used, and also there's a control. If it is Tata Motors, they have their own charging infra, and with that, only you can charge Tata cars. That is slowly, of course, changing now, and people are now changing the, getting into that idea of what you are saying has to have a common charging, with which all two-wheelers you can charge, and all four-wheelers, of course, there's a different. There's a growing three-wheeler, population is also happening in India. So for them, again, there is a different charging system. So with that, what will happen? Anyone making a two-wheeler has to have to the same standard. Definitely, Niti Aayog is pushing that concept. It should happen. But at this point, several manufacturers have their own, that software controlled this thing is there. And added to that, the charging happens in such a way that you don't have to pay anything. It's all open, this thing. So there's no payment. Payment happens only in your system account. So if you have an app, so it gets debited in your app, and then that's how the system works. So all that standardization is now happening, and it will definitely. India is one where, from many other they think like Japanese, they have a different standard. Korea, China have different. US has a different. So slowly we are getting into that one European standard. Yeah.
I think standardization will happen when the evolution stops. The EV industry is still at a very, very nascent stage on evolution. The batteries are changing fast. The motors are changing fast. The power electronics is changing fast. One way of ensuring that we can have standardization is some of these evolutions, R&D, we talked about R&D, if the government is going to fund it, then it can demand that it develops a standard. It happened in the cell phone industry. And so I'm encouraging the government at the union level and the state level to start putting more money into supporting development of these. That is how we're going to get ahead of the competition and also establish standards.
Thanks. I think Sharif and then Mr. Bagdia.
It's a very interesting question and topic to discuss. I was reading a book in service of Republic. There the argument about, and EV being a very technology-driven and very nascent stage of technological development, if you standardize things, the level of innovation that will happen and could happen will drop down significantly. And therefore, we'll have to see which are the segments within EV that could be standardized. And it's the same case as the C charger point discussion that happened in EU, where the standardization in the charging port and the counter argument was in terms of killing the innovation in this sector. I think that's important to consider, particularly from the government side, while talking about standardization.
Mr. Bagdia.
Like what they said, like there are already efforts ongoing on charging. We have CCS standards, and on two-wheelers and three-wheelers, we also have the standards with the PSA office, which is already existing. So I think the standard story is coming along.
Yeah, that was a great question that triggered lots of comments. So thanks. One last question.
Just one last one. Hi,
Yeah.
so this is Uttam from iForest. So I have a question that is going from morning session till now. So basically starting from we talked about consumer behaviors, we talked about technology, and we talked about innovation. And at the same time, we talked about reskilling of the people, workers. And we also know that in India or globally, we can say that ACMs work in collaboration with OEMs to build up or to scale up technologies and integrate them on vehicles. So when EV sales actually rise up and consumer demands for EV rise and they demand new features in the vehicles in future, how do you see it as a challenge how these new features in EVs can be integrated in new vehicles with the current ACMs and OEMs? I hope I was clear.
Yeah. Any panelists that you want to address it to?
I think it is open to all panelists.
Open to all, but should I give it to Mr. Arvind? If you have any comments on ACM OEM integration?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. I would say that, the rest of the panelists said, this is very nascent and it's a lot of learning. So earlier in the IC engine, what I've seen is OEMs would bring the technology, they would teach the ACMs, and there would be a transfer there. Now it looks like it's more collaborative, and a lot of times it's the ACM, especially in the electronics, the BMS and all that, where the ACMs take the lead and they bring the technology to the OEMs. So it's probably going to be very collaborative going forward, and it'll be challenging for a lot of people, but it'll be exciting also, I guess. So that's what I feel.
Mr. Srinivas.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of development by the tier ones, and the there'll be Intels to which the Dells and others will work very closely and bring technology in. It's going to be very collaborative. Right now, of course, companies like Ola, they don't see the tier ones doing the work, so they have to do it. But if they see the tier ones, they'll be very happy to step away from it and focus on servicing the customer.
So do you think there will be a pressure on these tier 1, tier 2 or ACMs in future?
I think the tier ones will be looking at it as an opportunity. You can call it as a pressure. If you want to dominate the world, you grab the opportunity.
Great.
Yes.
I think with that, we'll close the session. This was an incredible conversation. Thank you to the excellent panel that we had today. And a good round of applause for everybody. And handing this over to Mandvi, I guess, to you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Okay. Yes, sir. Sir, thank you.